hoping to grasp somehow. Hey internet, it's Jessica and welcome back to Seduce Me to the Demon War, Damien's route. So in the last episode we did discover that Damien is actually still human. He didn't exactly lose his demon powers. Diana just made it look like he did, and unfortunately he has them back now that he's in the demon world. So he's a little bit upset, and I totally understand why, but also the fact that I just chose Shadow as my trainer, so this will probably end well. Let's see how much this guy's gonna piss me off today. Choosing Shadow defied almost every part of my moral compass. He seemed like a fantastical sociopath, lacking a care for anyone but the war and himself. That is true when that bitch sent Diana flying out the window and pissed me off. Still, I had to admit that his personality made me curious about his abilities. After all, he was one that almost sent me back home through Diana's shadow. As the memory of the void filled my thoughts, I began to try to dissect how it was done. Were Shadow's doorways here? Was Shadow just that powerful? How exactly was he able to turn the person's shadow into a void through the world? Maybe that was the reason why I chose him as my trainer. My curiosity about his abilities were pecking at me and I needed an answer. Learning some of those abilities myself was just the icing on the cake. Oh god, here we go. I was guided into the library by a scout, most likely under orders, and found Shadow reading through some scrolls on the table near the fireplace. Upon me entering, Shadow looked over.
Ah, there you are. Come, sit.
Shadow motioned a hand towards one of the seats and almost dismissively continued to pore over what he was reading. I followed the directions and sat down in the chair, watching him. For a full minute, he said nothing. I watched as he read each line of the scroll before him, and occasionally switched scrolls to read what the others had written down beside them. The handwritten was hastily scribbled Latin, so there was no way for me to understand it. However, I began to feel a little agitated. Weren't we supposed to be training? Excuse me? I needed to get his attention. This was a little ridiculous. Was he not told that he was supposed to actually train me? Why would he expect me, though? Despite my statement, Shadow continued to ignore me and kept browsing through the scrolls on the table. Shadow. Still nothing. I was becoming even more agitated at the silence. I decided to simply stand up, hoping to catch his attention. However, as I attempted to, I felt myself unable to push off against the chair, like I was stuck to the seat. Huh? I looked down at the chair I was in. It was a simple chair. How was I stuck? I wiggled a bit in my seat, knowing that I wasn't sitting on anything sticky, nor anything keeping me down physically. What the hell? So I attempted to stand once more, unable to move any further than a centimeter up from the seat, before needing to sit back down.
Do you understand now, human?
It's him, right? I looked up at Shadow, seeing him continually to visually ignore me, but noticed a small smirk on his lips. He was holding me down somehow?
When you can stand, we will begin.
Oh my god, this guy's gonna be that kind of asshole, isn't he? My eyes widened. This was a test. This was an unfair trap of a test that I fell into, and now that I have to find my way out. I had to figure out how he was trapping me to the chair and stand. This is going to be an adventure and a half. I looked down and around my body on the seat, seeing my shadow beneath me. It was pretty obvious that he was using my shadow to hold me down, but the question was how I was going to break its hold. I took a moment and let my thoughts dissect the problem. He was holding me by the shadow. He had to have been. It only made sense. If I somehow made my shadow disappear, then his hold would vanish along with it. However, how was I supposed to do that? My shadow was beneath me, formed by the shape of my body and the firelight. Then it hit me. The fire, of course! I looked at the fireplace, seeing it burn bright from the pyre within its mouth. It illuminated the room and gave me every person and object a shadow. As I stared into it, my plan became set. I smirked and gripped my armrest and planted my feet onto the floor. I pulled my chair onto one of its legs, pushing it off the ground with my foot, and completely turned the chair around, facing away from it. My entire body became covered in shadow, but I knew my plan had worked. I no longer felt a hold on me, keeping me in the chair. My shadow vanished in the new darkness around me. I quickly pushed off the chair, finally being able to stand. It seemed so freeing to be able to stand again, having been trapped in that chair. As I felt my body standing up straight, Shadow let out an impressive
Quicker than I anticipated.
I glared. Did he honestly think that little of me? You asshole! Seriously? Or just leave? Huh, interesting. I don't think that, leaving is I don't know, that probably won't teach anything, right? If we say that? I don't know. I had to stare at Shadow like he had 5 heads. As he turned to me, he smirked at my facial expression, causing me to fight back the urge to snap at him.
I had to see how intelligent you were. I'm not going to waste time on someone who doesn't know how to use their brain.
Okay. Despite the insult, I could feel that he underhandedly complimented me in a twisted way. I guess I was able to pull out of his statement was that I was smart enough to fend for myself. I could tell that this was going to be both an annoying process, but at least an interesting one. Shadow shook his head and stepped away from the table and towards me. He gripped the chair I was on and turned it back to face the fireplace before crossing his arms.
What I will be teaching you are mere basics of dark magic.
Okay.
You will be able to hide in plain sight, control your environment, and even defend against impossible odds. I expect you to use these abilities wisely. Understood?
I suddenly became excited. I would be able to do all those things? The idea of it became rather fascinating and outright too good to be true. However, I was in the demon world. Anything was possible. I nodded and mentally prepared for whatever he threw my way. I wouldn't fall for another trap. Shadow took in a breath and let out a silent sigh before closing his eyes. His body slowly became pitch black, covered in a wave of shadow despite the firelight on his body. His form slowly melted down into the ground and faded into shadow on the table beside him. Okay, he just sank into the ground, that's fine. What? I became confused, but as I stood up for a moment, there was only silence as I replied. Was this what he was meant by using my brain? I had to copy him? How did he even do that? How was I going to even start trying? You're not going to tell me how to do that? I was once again greeted with silence, making me let out a sigh. I had to figure it out. I replayed the spell in my head from memory, trying to discern how he made himself into a shadow. Maybe I had to think about becoming a shadow. Did that even make sense? I closed my eyes and tried to imagine darkness covering me. As stupid as it sounded, it was worth a shot. However, as I did, something in my nerves seemed to make me hesitate. I could sense a feeling of cold dread trying to take over my body as I thought about the darkness. Was this something I was supposed to feel? I suddenly felt scared and started to second-guess my desire to learn about dark magic.
Why are you hesitating?
I hear Shadow's voice rumble through the air, causing me to question the training. Did I want to go through with this? I mean, at this point we have no fucking choice, right? Because we have to train with this idiot, so... I shook my head. I needed to be brave about this. It was a new set of skills I could use in battle. I just had to take it slow. Closed my eyes again, took a deep breath, and focused on becoming a shadow. A cold feeling ran through my body, crawling over my skin and completely enveloping in its embrace. Soon my entire body had become surrounded in frozen numbness. As I opened my eyes, I gasped at the sight. Shadow was once again in front of me, but in the room around us had become visually dark and misty, like in another world. My body felt alight as I stepped towards the trainer in confusion. Shadow lifted an arm and gestured decisively around us towards the environment.
Welcome to the Shadow Plane.
Ooh, cool. The Shadow Plane? This is like Kingdom Hearts, you know what I mean?
Indeed. Think of it as a copy of the real world. But no one lives here except shadows.
I furrowed my eyebrows, still confused, but gasped as I heard the quick footsteps rushing outside of the door. I was shocked to see demons in black hoods and cloaks running back and forth along the hall. What the hell?
Those are my scouts. They use this plane to travel without being hindered by other beings. They're much quicker this way.
Oh. I looked to the ground, seeing it coated completely black in darkness. How was I able to be here if I was in this new plane? I thought I was trapped in the demon world. How can I be here if I'm accursed?
This plane is part of the demon world, so the curse does not affect you coming here. We are currently shadows of the real world. Untouchable. Barely traceable.
It's like an alternate universe, not an alternate timeline. I guess that makes any sense. Like, it's still using the same world. It's just a mirror of it. I nodded, taking in what he was saying, so I was able to roam around and not be seen. That was an interesting power. Shadow began to walk out of the room, urging me to follow him.
Come. You will see the benefit of this world in action.
I quickly followed, excited to see what we were going to do. Where would we go? What was he going to show me? Shadow and I walked quietly through the halls. I could faintly see the outlines of people who were not in the Shadow Plane, and became shocked to see Shadow simply pass through them, as if they weren't there. As a couple of people passed through me, I felt instinctively strange, but physically felt nothing. It was like I was a ghost. We were truly shadows. As we arrived at the war room, Shadow stopped me and peered inside. I crouched and looked through the door as well, hiding out of instinct. Oh. Inside were Diane and a person covered in a cloak. Diana's face painted the situation and emotions very clearly as one agitated towards the girl who stood before her at attention.
Shama, I understand that he didn't accept it, but where did you take it?
I was told to throw it away.
What?
Your master told you to throw it away.
As I said, ma'am.
Diana gazed at the hooded figure, burying her stare into her soul. However, Diana could only sigh. What was Diana asking about? What did the figure throw away?
Very well. You are dismissed.
What is happening? The demon bowed and left the room, passing through me in shadow. It still felt weird that people were able to go through me, but I shook it out as Shadow cleared his throat.
Scare the succubus.
What? What? We're gonna scare Diana? I looked up at Shadow, surprised at the demand. However, his cold gaze pierced back into mine, letting me know that he was serious about what he asked of me. I instantly became nervous and a little fearful. I had to scare Diana. That's a little bit frightening because Diana's a scary person, like, when she wants to be, and I feel like she wouldn't, like, appreciate that, you know? How? The idea of appearing behind her came to mind, but Shadow seemed to know what I was thinking.
Scare her from this plane.
Now things became complicated. This was a space where I was just walking through people. How was I even gonna face her in this world? I looked into the room, taking note of everything. The light in the room was pretty bright, her shadow cast against the wall, mimicking Diana's actual movements. Was I able to do anything with that? What about the light in the room? Was it possible to dim the lights like a ghost? It seemed a bit complicated, but it could be fun. I took a moment before deciding. Okay, I'm pretty sure the dude wants us to mess with her shadow because that's the whole point of dark magic, right? I don't think it has to be really with the lights. We're not a spooky ghost at this point, so I'm gonna say mess with Diana's shadow. It seemed like the most simple plan, so I decided to go through with it. I quickly rushed and hugged the wall next to Diana's shadow. With a closer view, the shadow seemed almost like a detailed as the real person. Every strand of hair and pigment of the darkness. It was kind of cool, the more I stared, but I had a job to do. I focused on her head, noting the horns protruding from it. The shadow made it look like she had ears, fairly cute. Maybe I could do something? I raised my hand and ran my fingers along the horns of her shadow, hoping to grasp somehow. Oh my god, she shouldn't have touched Diana's horns. If I remember what Michaela said about, demons and their horns, oh dear. Suddenly, I shot my head to Diana, who released a moan. She bent over the table, gripping the horn I caressed via shadow, with a slight shaky hand. The hell? Did I do that? Diana looked around, her face as red as a tomato. Were her horns a weakness? I grazed my fingers along her shadow over the other horn, out of curiosity. Oh god! Oh my god! Diana gripped her other horn and bent over further, hiding her horns in her shadow. Damn. However, I became mildly excited. I could touch her without touching her. This made no sense, but it was working. I could only guess that this was the power of shadow demons. Diana stood up straight, taking in a breath before letting out a sigh.
Dear, I know you're there.
I knew it! She can't be like, oh, who the fuck is that? I'm pretty sure Diana's a very powerful being, so I think she would know. The hell? How did she know? As shadow switched into the real world, I felt my body force itself back as well. Like I had ran out of energy. I finally felt warmth consume my body, making me feel dizzy and lightheaded. What?
She's done quite well. She went into the shadow plane without much hesitation.
I see.
I naturally hugged the wall, feeling the after effects of transfer dance over my body like a rippling wave of wind. It felt so strange. I knew I had a lot of energy, but I wasn't able to stay in the shadow plane for long.
I'm surprised she managed to stay there for as long as she did.
Hey!
I expected her to phase out before we came here.
Because she has magic herself, that's kind of why.
To do what, exactly?
Shadow stared at Diana blankly before turning towards the door and walking out. Wow!
Come. We have more work to do, human.
Okay. The irritated look on Diana's face looked semi-hilarious, but I shook my head and ran after Shadow, pumped to learn more. How did I do all of that?
Curious, are you?
Well, yeah, I am your student after all. I want to know. As we walked back to the library, Shadow looked at me and gave a slight smirk.
You are quite interesting for a human.
I still don't trust him. I felt a bit flattered and ran my hand behind my neck, bearing a shy smile. I had to admit, I was acting like a little girl who just learned about candy. Still, I had a very good reason. I did something I never imagined I could do. It was well worth the excitement. Shadow shook his head and let out a sigh.
While it is impossible for us to touch anyone in the shadow plane, let alone assassinate them, it is very possible to distract them, or affect the light sources of the world.
Oh, so we can fuck with the lights like a spooky ghost, alright. Like how I did?
Indeed. A shadow is more than just a reaction to light. It is also a part of a person's being, able to be used to Let's just say, get a message across.
So, like, threaten somebody, pretty much. So I can't kill anyone from the Shadow Plane.
No, but you can very easily make them feel as if they aren't alone, putting them on alert and giving you a good chance to kill them while they're distracted.
Okay. I took a moment to take in what he meant. I could see how manipulating the shadows were a great benefit in battle. However, apparently I had a time limit for how long I could be in the shadows. At least it wasn't entirely overpowered. Yeah, if it was OP, then, that'd be really bad. The remainder of the day became focused on me manipulating lights and shadows in the library. While being in the Shadow Plane was fun, it was only effective if targets of movements were either sources of light or had a distinct shadow on their own. At the end of the day, I was exhausted. Who knew that using dark magic would be so difficult? Still, I guess I had the potential, or else I wouldn't be succeeding in passing the test Shadow threw at me. I had to be proud of that. I slumped and fell onto the ground, exhausted. I was definitely used up a lot of energy, and it was foreign feeling to me as a human. It was like my body became heavier with each breath I took, but it wasn't entirely painful. A small huff caused me to look over at Shadow, seeing him stare at me intensely with crossed arms. What?
For a human, you have a large amount of energy. I'm surprised you're not a witch.
I think, if Mika really wanted to, I feel like she could be, right? Like Carrie is? I felt a little bolstered by the statement. Despite how strangely he phrased it, I guess Shadow really couldn't genuinely compliment anyone. I wonder why. I had so much to learn, but was excited for the next day as my training ended, and I was sent to my room. I channeled my energy forward through the hall, wanting so much to go back to the room, flop on the bed, and sleep. However, something in my gut stopped me from moving as I approached the bedroom door. Oh god, what is it now? Something felt wrong. Whether it was something in the air or my natural instinct screaming at me, something was throwing me off and I couldn't pin down why. As a pain groan escaped the room, my suspicions were confirmed. I peeked into the bedroom to see Damien curled up on the bed, gripping his head and pressing his knees into his chest. Damien? I rushed over and knelt by the bed, now insanely worried. What was happening to him? As I got close, however, Damien jutted his hand out, facing his palm to me in a tense position.
Stop! Don't!
Why? What? I froze in place. His face was contorted with one extreme pain, gritted his teeth and crushing his eyebrows together in a tight expression of agony. I couldn't tell what was going on, but whatever it was torturing him. Damien violently shook his head, digging his fingers further into his head.
Please, just stop!
Oh shit. Oh no! Oh no! What do I do? Oh no, I feel like Damien is telling the truth, like we shouldn't go near him, but like at the same time it's just like, if we don't do anything, will that like fuck me over? Fuck! I wanna help though! Oh god, I'm gonna help! Oh my god. I needed to find some way to help him. I began to think of everything I could. Get the brothers, get Diana, get someone to heal him. I could hold him close and try to soothe him. However, the more I thought of things to do, the more Damien began to close in on himself, shaking, my eyes widening in the realization. He was getting bombarded with thoughts, and I was adding to, oh no. At that moment, I let my mind go blank, hoping that would calm Damien down. As I did, Damien continued to shake, but not as violently as he did before. However, a full minute passed and had nothing changed. I began to instinctively worry, but I forced the feeling in my chest to continue, to let my head remain empty of thought. Damien attempted to take deep breaths, trying to calm down further, but to no avail. I became even more worried than before. What was I supposed to do?
Liberamente tua.
Oh, the sound of Diana's voice echoed through the room, forcing me to turn around and look at her as she stood in the doorway. She stared hard at Damien, holding a hand out to him. Her fingers and palms began to glow dark purple color, like the flame dancing over her skin. Whoa, what the hell's going on? Damien slowly rolled onto his knees on the bed, still gripping his head and growling to himself as Diana slowly approached him, holding her hand close to his, forward tilting his head.
Liberamente tua.
The flames around Diana's hands sparkled, intensified in its glow, as Damien winced and hissed from the sting of the pain. I continued to remain still, not wanting to add the pressure of Damien's head, but confused as to what Diana was doing. Very slowly, Damien's head began to glow, the same purple color from the stream of purple energy that began to trickle from him towards Diana's hand. As it connected, the energies around Damien's head began to fade at last, and Damien's tense form began to relax. Diana tensed her hands and caused the flames around her skin to wrap around itself, forming an orb above her palm as she turned it towards her. As it settled into a physical purple ball, she gasped and let out the shatter in her hand. Glass and blood began to trickle from from her closed grip as Damien finally released a breath of air, slamming his hands down onto the mattress beneath him, curling himself further over his knees. Damien? I instantly reached over and placed my hands around his arm, feeling the cold sweat run down from them, the struggle that he was fighting against earlier. He was paler than before, but his face slowly melted into an expression of calm relief. I looked back at Diana, seeing her lift her hand to her mouth and licked over her new wounds. Oh, she's the one who's bleeding. I thought it was Damien. Blood trickled down her arm, but she managed to catch most of it with her tongue, unfazed by Damien's sudden relaxation or my stare. What did you do? Diana kept her focus on her arm and hand as she replied.
I did something that his brothers should have done a long time ago. Placed a barrier on his mind.
Oh. What? I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion, not understanding what she meant. As Diana finally looked back at me, she let out a sigh at my expression.
He can read minds, but he can't control it. However, imagine putting a bubble around his thoughts. He wouldn't be able to hear anything but his own. This is precisely what I have done.
That's pretty smart. I'm actually wondering why James or even Eric wouldn't think to do that for Damien. Is it just because they're not powerful enough to do something like that? Then what was the energy you pulled out from him?
That was something that shouldn't have been there. It's nothing to be concerned about. Right, Damien?
No, what? You can't just say that to me. You can't be like, yeah, it's something that was there, but don't worry about it, fiance of Damien, don't worry about it. Again, I became more confused. However, I looked up to Damien to see him looking up at Diana with an almost forced thankful look. I could tell that he was grateful for the assistance, but I could tell that he was still angry with her.
However, that spell won't last forever. He'll need to maintain it using energy. But I'm sure you can provide that, correct?
Yeah, that's no problem, but yeah, you didn't answer my question as to what the fuck that was, but okay. I was lost, but I understood what she was saying, not any acknowledgement. What'd you take from Damien? I really want to know. I wanted to know what exactly was going on. The confusion that was going on throughout the day of Damien's well-being was too much to ignore, and I needed it to be sorted out. If not for him, for then my own sanity. Diana gave me a firm look, crossing her arms.
A little piece of the demon lord that has been haunting him. Happy?
I was right! Fuck you! So all that vision of the stuff that Damien kept seeing of Diana, like, mocking him and whatever, we even saw a bit of that with, our character when she was putting on her wedding dress, where this voice was talking to her, but it sounded like Diana. I'm just like, that doesn't sound like Diana, because Diana's not a bitch. We already confirmed this with the other route, so fuck the demon lord. What? Diana shook her head and let out a sigh.
He can explain if you're that curious.
Diana then turned on her heel and walked towards the door. Before she left, however, she turned back and looked to Damien.
Be careful how much you feed. You've been without energy for too long. You'll be craving soon. Oh, okay. With those haunting words, Diana finally left the room as Damien laid his head on mine. He let out a real tired sigh as I looked up at him, lost as ever. Poor Damien! What the hell? Just from the expression, I could tell that he was just beyond relief to be let out of whatever torture mind reading I had forced upon him. It was something he had never wanted, yet he endured for the day, until Diana blocked his mind. Why didn't she do it before? It was beyond me, but at least he was okay now. The more I thought about it, the more a part of me began to question this situation. If Damien could block out his mind reading, then would it be possible for him to not be a demon again? As a demon, he has many interesting abilities. Then again, it is his decision. And what he's told me about his past, he didn't wish to relive any of it with the skin he was born in. I let my inner conflict wane as I cupped Damien's cheek, feeling him nuzzle into it. Right now, Damien needed some tender, loving care, and I needed to provide it for him. Are you okay?
I am now.
I could hear the ease dip from his voice, making me smile. He was okay. I slowly climbed onto the bed and I wrapped my arms around his body, feeling him cuddle into my embrace and letting out a hum of joy at the feeling. It was cute to see him like this, but then again, he was cute to begin with. It is true, he's so cute! Another reason why I loved him. I ran my hand slowly through his hair and let him settle down from the ordeal he had went through. I could tell that he was exhausted, just like I was. However, he began to speak, making me awaken enough to pay attention to him.
I've been having nightmares, too.
You have? I looked down at Damien as he nodded to look up at me. The dark circles under his eyes were much more potent the closer I was to him, making me frown a bit at the sight. Still, he continued.
Some sort of shadow kept visiting me and taunting me for my choices. It would change shape every time, and just now, it only helped in making my mind-reading abilities worse.
So it's the father, right? Because he's the same one visiting in our nightmare. Damien. I gave Damien a small squeeze, making him lean up and kiss my cheek before nuzzling his head into my shoulder, continuing.
I didn't want to worry you with it because I thought it was a side effect to becoming human. But I guess it was right. I was always a demon.
No, Damien! I frowned even further and nuzzled his head gently. It's gone now, right? There's nothing you need to worry about anymore.
I know.
Damien and I held each other, both settling into the situation we were under. This was a large step for us, and we had somehow had to deal with it, most likely after we returned to the demon world. Would Damien get used to being a demon once again, or will he demand to try and become a human once more? I couldn't say for sure. The exhaustion that plagued us took over us at last, driving us to sleep within each other's arms. Like she said earlier, yeah, it's good that, Damien has his own, demon powers. He could protect us so that fucking nightmare that we saw in the beginning of this route doesn't come true. But at the same time, it's his choice for, what he wants to do, right? Rather if he wants to become a human or stay as a demon. It's not really our choice. I half expected the night to become uneventful, but the thoughts began to plague me, trying to disassemble all of my discoveries and everything that happened to us in my subconscious. We were in the demon world, and Damien was back to being a demon, despite the fact that he never actually became human in the first place, even though Diana said that she had done it. The dizzying cycle of confusion waved around each thought, making them spin as I tried to reorganize and dissect them.
There's no use in trying, dear.
Oh my god, can this guy leave us alone?
In the end.
Diana's voice rang in the air, causing me to look around in surprise at the dark. Diana?
Keep telling yourself that, dear. Whatever helps you sleep.
I spun around the space, trying to pin down where her voice was coming from, but saw nothing but black color, and my image's stream greet me as I did. Still, Diana's voice rang out to me as loud and clear, as if she was there, watching and speaking me to somewhere nearby. Was this only meant to confuse me more? What do you want?
What do you think, dear? I'm here to haunt you and tell you how your life is a complete mess now that Damien is back to being a demon. Oh, wait. He was never human in the first place.
Yo, this guy's a fucking ass. I sneered at the dark, unbelieving what I was hearing. He might as well have been. He didn't have magic or mind reading or anything, so he was close enough.
Something tells me that you're actually happy about the turn of events. No?
What?
Think about it. Damien with his powers. He's not a boring human. He can enthrall you and use magic and protect you forever and ever without worrying about human trivialities.
Is the ending choice gonna make us choose whether or not to have Damien use his demon powers? I have a feeling, just from assuming again, this is the stupid demon lord that keeps haunting us and keeps heckling us, but the way that they're speaking, be like, oh, wouldn't you want Damien to be a demon, not a human, so he can use his powers and shit like that? They keep saying that over and over again to Mika, and at the same time they keep tormenting Damien about it. So is it is the demon lord's plan to make sure Damien becomes a demon again or something? I don't know. I took a moment to myself, taking in what the voice proclaimed in Diana's voice. While it was true that Damien and I accepted his humanity, a part of me was rather excited to see him as a demon again. Maybe it was nostalgia of meeting him as a demon, or maybe it was because it was part of him and I loved him. I loved that he made me happy. I couldn't tell. At my silence, the voice air chuckled deeply.
See? There's nothing wrong with a little demon power. What was Damien thinking?
Shut up! At that moment, my mind began to cloud with agreement. What was Damien thinking? Why desire to be human? Humans were weaker than demons, and he could do so many things now that he had a barrier around his mind reading. He didn't have to give up his power now, and energy would be completely okay. The voice disappeared, leaving the thought of Damien engraved in my dreams. He ran through my mind as the night passed into the morning the next day. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is a trap to make sure that we keep him as a demon. I don't like that, cause I don't know what's gonna happen in the end. I woke up to Damien still in my arms. With the grogginess of the morning overtook my body and made me feel like I was going back to sleep. Something about Damien in my arms made me keep my eyes open. He seemed at peace, finally having some shut-eye and getting a proper rest. I felt a wave of happiness run through me, but at the same time I couldn't help but remember the voice in my dreams. Damien was a demon. I ran my fingers through Damien's hair, becoming lost in the thought once again. Was I being selfish, or was I just being positive? Damien seemed to only hate his mind reading, and that was taken care of. At the same time, a wave of reality washed over my moral compass. Damien had to be the one to decide. It was his body, and he was the one ultimately living in it. But was it even possible to become human? The question crossed my mind and settled as if I stared into the far wall. Would Damien even have a choice? That's what I keep saying. Like, we're probably gonna be the ones to have to choose for him, right? That's really fucked up. Well, if there was no choice in the matter, then Damien was set in living happier life with his mind reading ability under a barrier. I just had given him energy, which didn't seem to be a big deal. As Damien nuzzled my shoulder in his sleep, I looked down at him as he smiled. Yeah, it was okay. I rubbed my eyes to stop as I managed to spot Diana in the doorway, holding 2 plates of food and leaning against the door frame. The food looked delicious, but the intrusion was out of place. Yeah, that's kind of random. She didn't, knock the door or anything. Diana? Diana placed a finger to her lips before walking over and gently placing the food she brought onto the table nearby the bed. Being careful not to make noise, Damien seemed to cuddle closer, despite obviously smelling the food and by the wiggling of his nose. I couldn't help but smile and nod to Diana, combing my fingers through Damien's hair, as Diana crossed her arms in watch, lowering her voice barely above the whisper to speak to me.
You seem to be in a good mood.
I nodded, looking up at the succubus as I gently gave Damien a squeeze. Yeah, Damien got some sleep, which is what he needed. I took a moment to look down at Damien's sleeping face, seeing how innocent and peaceful it was. The dark circles under his eyes seemed to have vanished, causing another relaxed wave to rush over me.
Have you given him any energy?
I shook my head, not remembering at all giving him any energy. Whether he took energy in our sleep or something, I would have been unaware, so I could only assume that he had not taken any from me at all. Diana pressed her lips together before looking to Damien.
You'll need to feed him energy soon.
I know. Diana nodded in reply before turning on her heel and walking out the door. Before she crossed the threshold, however, she looked back at me over her shoulder.
I'm curious about something.
Huh? What is it? For a moment, hesitation took over Diana's expression before she settled into curiosity and asked.
What are your thoughts about him being a demon once again?
Okay. Personal opinion, my opinion, I would rather have Damien be whatever the hell he wants. I really don't give a shit about his demon powers. If he wants to be human, that's perfectly fine. He's a fucking cinnamoroll. He needs to be happy, okay? He's so sad all the time. I hate it. I want him to be happy, so I wouldn't give a shit. If he wanted to be a fucking helicopter, he could do that too. I don't care. Stated Diana, seeing the curiosity burn in her eyes. My grip slightly tightened around Damien as I let my thought try to construct an answer. At the same time, I wasn't entirely 100% sure myself. He wants to be human. I'm happy he's demon. I don't know. I feel like Mika doesn't know what to think about this. Obviously, she just said that. She's very conflicted, but he wants to be human, so I'm gonna side with Damien, what he wants. At the end of the day, Damien desired to be human above everything else. He made that clear when he met me, and I wanted to respect his decision. Hell, I fell in love with him even as he became a human. He and I were closer that way. Diana stared at me for a moment before nodding in acknowledgement and leaving the room, closing the door behind her. That was an interesting interaction. That was a bit random, but okay. Looking down at Damien's sleeping form, he had turned his head in his sleep so that I could only see the top of his orange head. I smiled slightly and I kissed the top of his head, causing him to stir a bit in my arms. At the end of it all, I wanted what was best for us, and that was something we had to deal with together. Whether or not this ended with him being a human or not was up in the air. But for now, I had a responsibility of caring for him. Damien gently squeezed my form, allowing me to take in that he was awake now, and looked up at me with tired eyes.
Good morning.
I couldn't help but smile at his expression. He was an early bird, but the rare occasion where I caught him more entranced in sleep than me were moments that I found adorable. Good morning, sleepyhead. Damien blushed a bit before crawling up a bit and kissing me sweetly. I smiled wider against his lips and wrapped my arms around him, melting into the kiss lovingly. It had been years since I felt an incubus energy drain, so to feel my energy snake over my nerves into into my lips. It felt odd. I had to get used to it again for now, and I tightened my arms around Damien to keep from pulling away from the slightest surprise that it brought me. As we slowly pulled away, I could see a tint of gold course through Damien's eyes as he looked down at me and licked his lips. A red tint brushed over my cheeks. Was my energy that delicious? What did it even taste like? Before I could ask, however, Damien sat up and stretched his arms over his head, letting a small yawn trickle in his throat. When he relaxed, he looked towards the table, seeing the food Diana brought us.
Oh, wow. Did you make that?
Wait a second, are you saying that we don't know how to cook? I looked over before shaking my head. Diana came and delivered it to us. Damien observed the plates for a bit and listened to me before rolling out a bread and going over to the table and lifting the plates off of them. As he returned back to me, I took time to sit up in bed, leaning back against the bedpost. Damien passed the plate to me and sat beside me, placing his own plate on his lap and eating what was prepared for us. I, however, watched for a moment, wondering what was going on in his head. What did he make about this whole thing? He seemed in better shape than he was before, which was good. Was he easily adjusting back to being a demon? A part of me felt a little happy at the idea, while the other part of me tried to be realistic. This was temporary, maybe. As Damien caught me staring, he looked up at me and stopped eating, causing me to flinch from being caught and started eating my own food.
What is it?
Huh?
You were staring at me. What's wrong?
You're just so handsome. No, I really want to be honest with Damien, so I'm gonna ask him.
About what?
Well, about you being a demon stuff. I couldn't read his mind. I needed to figure it out somehow, and it was better to ask him personally than to make assumptions. Maybe he changed his mind about the whole thing, or maybe it became worse. Only he knew. Damien looked down at his plate for a moment before closing his eyes.
I don't like it.
You don't?
I don't. As good as it is to have my powers back, I still don't like using them.
So you'd rather be human without powers to fight? I didn't intend to be rude with the question, but the idea of enjoying a powerless life seems rather odd to me. Damien nodded, affirming my comment. I mean, I don't think it's odd, but I guess Mika would, because, you know, you hung around demons, like, for a long while now, so you think, like, oh, that's cool, like, I wish I could do that kind of thing. But for me personally, I mean, like, if he's happy, who gives a shit, you know what I mean?
I would rather have no abilities at all than live with the responsibility of them. Having power has brought me too much pain for me to be happy with them.
Damien looked up at me, a serious flame in his eyes.
But if having powers will get us home, then I will do everything I can to ensure that we return safely.
Oh God, please don't sacrifice yourself. I stared wide-eyed at Damien, surprised at his words, but thankful for how much he was willing to do the work for us to get back home. He was right. What mattered at the moment was getting home. We would figure out the human part after we returned. Damien and I continued to eat, eventually separating for training. Him to his brothers and me towards my own training session. Okay, guys, I'm gonna stop the episode here. So, that was, I mean, interesting in the sense that it's pretty much hinting that we have to choose if we're gonna keep Damien as a human or a demon for the final choice. At least the final main choice. And I hope I'm wrong, but I just can't shake the feeling just because of how much the Diana form keeps taunting us by saying, oh, wouldn't you want Damien to be a demon? So I really think that's what's going on here. And then also the fact that Shadow, I still don't know about him. I'm still mad about him, but like I don't know if I can trust him yet. We'll see. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this episode of Seduce Me Too, remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to join the companions, and please let me know what you guys thought about Damien's room. Also, if you would like to support me and the channel, please check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description. You get early access to videos for Patrons only, the Discord server to come talk to me, and a bunch of other cool stuff. Or if you would prefer to check out my store, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would check it out. On that note, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye! He's already asked me this before. Is he really that worried? I'm not. Maybe next time you invite 2 people over, don't start fucking one of them. Oh, bye. Oh no!